The rain hammered against the windows of Fort Bragg's administrative building as Major Sarah Chen stood before the promotion board, her uniform crisp despite the humid North Carolina morning. 5 stern faces stared back at her from behind the long oak table, their expressions unreadable as granite. She'd been here before, twice, and both times had ended the same way, rejection wrapped in polite military formality. "Major Chen," General Morrison began, his weathered hands folding over her personnel file, "your tactical scores are exemplary. Your leadership evaluations from subordinates are stellar. But," he paused, that single word hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. Sarah kept her posture rigid, eyes fixed on a point just above Morrison's head. She knew what was coming. It was always the same script, delivered with varying degrees of sympathy. "But there are concerns about your unconventional methods during the Atlanta crisis," Morrison continued. "Some members of the board feel your decision to evacuate civilians before securing the perimeter showed a lack of strategic priority." "With respect, sir," Sarah interjected, her voice steady despite the fire building in her chest. "Those civilians included a children's hospital. The intel was incomplete," Colonel Hartley cut in from Morrison's right, his thin lips pressed into a disapproving line. "You made a judgment call that could have cost military lives, but didn't," Sarah said firmly. "We saved 347 people that day, including 89 children, and we still completed the mission objective." The room fell silent. Through the rain-streaked windows, Sarah could see soldiers running PT drills, their formation perfect despite the weather. She'd been one of them once, full of hope that merit and dedication would be enough. Now, at 38, she was beginning to wonder if some ceilings were made of something stronger than glass. "We'll inform you of our decision within the week," General Morrison said, closing her file with a finality that told Sarah everything she needed to know. "Dismissed, Major." Sarah saluted crisply, executed a perfect about-face, and left the room with her dignity intact. It wasn't until she reached her car in the parking lot that she allowed her shoulders to slump. The rain had intensified, turning the world beyond her windshield into an impressionist painting of grays and greens. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mentor, retired General Patricia Williams. "How did it go?" Sarah stared at the screen for a long moment before typing. "Same as always. Too unconventional. Too risky. Too much of whatever I am that doesn't fit their mold." The response came quickly. "Come to DC this weekend. There's something we need to discuss." Sarah frowned at the cryptic message but didn't press for details. Patricia had been her advocate for years, one of the few high-ranking officers who saw potential where others saw liability. If she wanted to meet, it was important. The drive back to her quarters was a blur of windshield wipers and self-doubt. Sarah's mind replayed every operation, every decision that had been scrutinized and found wanting by those who hadn't been there, who hadn't seen the faces of the people whose lives hung in the balance. Her apartment was Spartan but comfortable, decorated with a few photographs from her deployments, and a single painting her mother had given her before she died, a landscape of the Colorado mountains where Sarah had grown up. She poured herself a glass of water and stood at the window, watching the storm bend the pine trees that lined the base housing area. Her phone rang. Captain Marcus Rodriguez, her second-in-command and closest friend. "Heard you had the board today," Marcus said without preamble. "How bad was it?" "About what we expected," Sarah replied, sinking into her couch. Hartley brought up Atlanta again. Marcus cursed under his breath. "That was 3 years ago, and we saved those kids." "Apparently that's the problem. I saved the wrong people in the wrong order." "That's bullshit, and you know it," Marcus said fiercely. "You're the best tactical mind in the entire division. Hell, probably in the entire army. They're just too blind to see it because you don't play their political games." Sarah smiled despite herself. Marcus had been with her through 6 deployments, countless training exercises, and more near-death experiences than either of them cared to count. His loyalty was unwavering, even when it might have been smarter to distance himself from her controversial reputation. "Speaking of which," Marcus continued, his tone shifting, "something weird is going on. I've been hearing rumors from friends at the Pentagon, high-level meetings, lots of classified traffic, and your name keeps coming up." Sarah sat up straighter. "My name? In what context?" "That's the thing. No one knows, but it's definitely connected to some new initiative. Very hush-hush. Even the people who usually know everything are in the dark." The conversation with Patricia suddenly took on new significance. "Marcus, I need you to keep your ears open. Let me know if you hear anything else." "Always do, Major." "Hey, you want to grab dinner? Thompson's making his famous chili in the mess hall." "Rain check," Sarah said. "I need to prepare for a trip to DC this weekend." After ending the call, Sarah moved to her desk and opened her laptop, She had learned long ago that information was currency in the military, and she'd built a network of contacts across various branches and agencies. If something was happening that involved her name, she needed to know about it. Her encrypted email showed several new messages. Most were routine: training schedules, equipment requisitions, performance reviews for her team. But one stood out, sent from an address she didn't recognize with a subject line that made her blood run cold. Project Prometheus Candidate Assessment. Sarah had never heard of Project Prometheus. The email itself was brief. Candidate Chen, S approved for Phase 2 evaluation. Await further instructions. She immediately tried to trace the sender, but the email had been routed through so many servers it was impossible to determine its origin. Whatever Project Prometheus was, someone with serious resources was behind it. The storm outside had evolved into a full-scale tempest, lightning illuminating the sky in stark, brief moments. Sarah closed her laptop and returned to the window, her mind racing. In her 18 years of service, she'd learned to trust her instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming that her life was about to change dramatically. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Patricia. Wear your dress uniform. And Sarah, trust no one else until we talk. Sarah stared at the message, a chill running down her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Patricia Williams didn't scare easily. If she was worried enough to send warnings about trust, then whatever was happening was bigger than a simple promotion board rejection. The next few days passed in a blur of routine duties and discreet inquiries. Sarah maintained her normal schedule: PT at 0500, briefings at 0700, training exercises in the afternoon. But her mind was elsewhere. She noticed things she might have overlooked before. The way certain superior officers seemed to watch her more closely, the unusual number of civilian contractors on base, the increase in secure communications traffic. Marcus proved invaluable, his network of contacts providing fragments of information that painted an incomplete but intriguing picture. A new military doctrine was being developed, something that required unconventional thinkers and adaptive leaders. Several other officers had been quietly transferred to temporary duty assignments in D.C. None had returned to discuss what they'd experienced. On Thursday afternoon, Sarah was reviewing tactical assessments in her office when she received an unexpected visitor. Lieutenant Colonel James Park, an intelligence officer she'd worked with in Afghanistan, stood in her doorway looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Sarah, got a minute?" She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Of course. What's on your mind, James?" He closed the door behind him and took a seat, his eyes scanning the room as if checking for surveillance devices. "I'm probably breaking about 15 regulations by being here, but I owe you for Kandahar." Sarah leaned back in her chair. She'd saved Park's reconnaissance unit from an ambush 5 years ago, a debt he'd always insisted he'd repay. "I'm listening." "There's a program," he said quietly. "Something new, something that's got everyone from the Joint Chiefs to the CIA buzzing. They're recruiting, but not through normal channels. They're looking for specific types of officers, ones who've shown exceptional judgment under impossible circumstances." "And?" Sarah prompted when he paused. "And your name is at the top of their list. Not just on it, at the very top. Whatever you did to get their attention, it's got some very powerful people interested in you. Any idea what this program is about?" Park shook his head. "Above my clearance level. But Sarah, I've been in intelligence for 15 years. I've never seen this level of secrecy around a personnel selection. Whatever they're planning, it's game-changing." After Park left, Sarah sat in the gathering dusk of her office, processing this new information. Her entire career had been marked by being overlooked, underestimated, and undervalued by the traditional military hierarchy. Now suddenly, she was at the top of someone's list. The question was, whose list, and what did they want from her? Friday morning arrived with clear skies and a crispness that suggested autumn's approach. Sarah packed carefully for her trip to D.C., including both civilian clothes and her dress uniform as Patricia had instructed. She'd told her command she was taking a weekend pass for personal business, which wasn't technically a lie. The drive from Fort Bragg to Washington, D.C. took about 5 hours, giving Sarah plenty of time to think. She'd made this journey before, usually for Pentagon briefings or congressional hearings, but this felt different. The weight of uncertainty pressed against her chest like a physical thing. She'd booked a room at a modest hotel in Arlington, close enough to the city center but far enough from the military establishments to avoid running into anyone she knew. After checking in and changing into her dress uniform, she took a moment to study herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her bore the marks of a career spent in challenging places: a thin scar along her jawline from shrapnel in Iraq, crow's feet from squinting in desert sun, hands that were steady and strong from years of weapons training. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, not a strand out of place. She looked like what she was, a professional soldier who'd earned every ribbon on her chest. But was that enough for whatever lay ahead? Patricia had asked her to meet at a private club in Georgetown, one of those establishments that didn't advertise its existence and whose membership list read like a who's who of military and intelligence leadership. Sarah had been there once before, as Patricia's guest, and remembered feeling out of place among the portraits of legendary generals and the quiet conversations that shaped national policy. She arrived at exactly 1700 hours, as instructed. The doorman, an elderly gentleman who somehow managed to look both welcoming and intimidating, recognized her immediately. "Major Chen, General Williams is expecting you. She's in the Eisenhower room." Sarah nodded and made her way through the club's dimly lit corridors. The Eisenhower room was a small, private dining area dominated by a portrait of the former president in his military uniform. Patricia Williams sat at a table near the window, her silver hair gleaming in the afternoon light. Even in retirement, Patricia carried herself with the bearing of someone who'd commanded respect for decades. She stood as Sarah entered, embracing her with genuine warmth. "Sarah, thank you for coming. Please sit. We have much to discuss." A waiter appeared silently, pouring water and leaving a bottle of wine before disappearing again. Patricia studied Sarah with those sharp gray eyes that had seen through countless junior officers' facades over the years. "I heard about the promotion board," Patricia began. "I'm sorry, but not surprised. The current leadership still values conformity over capability." Sarah shrugged. "It's nothing new. I knew my chances were slim. Perhaps with the traditional promotion track," Patricia said carefully. "But Sarah, what if I told you there was another path? One that would require you to leave everything you know behind, but could offer you the chance to truly make the difference you've always wanted to make." Sarah set down her water glass, her full attention on her mentor. "I'd say I'm listening." Patricia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What do you know about the changing nature of warfare in the 21st century? It's asymmetric," Sarah replied automatically. "Non-state actors, cyber warfare, economic pressure points. The traditional military structure isn't always equipped to handle the complexity." "Precisely. And certain forward-thinking individuals in our government have recognized that we need a new type of military leader. Someone who can think beyond conventional doctrine, who understands that sometimes the best victory is the one that prevents a war from starting in the first place." Patricia paused, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. "There's going to be a ceremony tomorrow night, a very private ceremony. You'll be invited to attend, but Sarah, I need you to understand, if you accept this invitation, there's no going back. Your life as you know it will end, and something new will begin." The weight of the moment settled over Sarah like a heavy cloak. "What kind of ceremony?" "The kind that happens in shadows," Patricia said softly. "The kind that creates leaders for wars that are never declared and victories that are never celebrated. The kind that could give you the authority to save lives in ways the traditional military structure would never allow." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. "This Project Prometheus? You're part of it?" Patricia's eyes widened slightly. "You always were too smart for your own good." "Yes, I'm part of it. One of the architects, actually. We've been planning this for years, identifying officers who show the kind of flexible thinking and moral courage that the future will demand. And I'm one of these officers. You're not just one of them, Sarah. You're the one we've been waiting for. Atlanta, Kandahar, the humanitarian mission in Sudan. Every time you chose lives over protocol, every time you found a solution that the textbooks said was impossible, you proved what we suspected. You're exactly what this country needs, even if the traditional leadership can't see it." The waiter returned with their meals, forcing a pause in the conversation. Sarah picked at her food, her appetite suppressed by the magnitude of what was being offered. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd built, would have to be left behind for an uncertain future. "I need to know more," Sarah finally said. "I can't make a decision like this blindly." Patricia nodded approvingly. "I wouldn't expect you to. Tomorrow night, you'll learn everything. The ceremony isn't just a formality, it's a revelation. You'll understand the full scope of what we're building and your place in it. But I can tell you this much. The title they're prepared to offer you is one that's never been given to anyone outside the traditional command structure. It comes with resources and authority that would make your current superior's head spin." "Supreme General," Sarah whispered, the words from the mysterious email suddenly making sense. Patricia's smile was sharp as a blade. "A title that will exist only in the shadows, known only to those who need to know. But the power it represents, that will be very real. Real enough to save lives on a scale you've never imagined. Real enough to prevent wars before they start. real enough to prove every doubter wrong, even if they never know it. As the sun set over Georgetown, casting long shadows through the club's windows, Sarah Chen sat at a crossroads. Behind her lay a career marked by excellence undermined by politics, by potential constrained by tradition. Ahead lay something unprecedented, power without recognition, authority without acclaim, the chance to serve her country in ways she'd never dreamed possible. "What time tomorrow?" she asked quietly. Patricia's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Midnight. I'll send you the location in the morning. Wear your dress uniform and Sarah, come alone. Trust no one except those who speak the code phrase, from shadows, light." Sarah nodded slowly, feeling the wheels of fate beginning to turn. Tomorrow night, she would step into those shadows. What emerged on the other side would determine not just her future, but possibly the future of American military doctrine itself. As she left the club and walked back to her car, the Washington Monument stood illuminated against the darkening sky, a beacon of the traditional power structure she was about to leave behind. But sometimes, Sarah reflected, the most important battles were fought in the darkness, by those willing to sacrifice recognition for results. The doubters had shaped her past. Tomorrow night would shape her future. And in that secret ceremony, surrounded by shadows and secrets, Major Sarah Chen would discover just how wrong everyone had been about her potential. The storm that had begun at Fort Bragg earlier that week was nothing compared to the one she was about to enter. But this time, she would be the force of nature others would have to reckon with. Saturday arrived with an unseasonable chill that made Washington, D.C. feel more like late November than early September. Sarah spent the morning in her hotel room, methodically cleaning her service weapon, a ritual that helped her think. The familiar motions of disassembly, cleaning, and reassembly had always centered her before major operations. This felt no different, except she had no idea what kind of operation she was walking into. At 1,000 hours, her secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Patricia. 2300 hours, Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60. Enter through the service gate on Eisenhower Drive. Security code, Echo 779. Come alone. From shadows, light. Arlington National Cemetery. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Section 60 was where the recent war dead were buried, soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan, many of whom she'd served alongside. Whatever this ceremony was, they'd chosen a location heavy with symbolism. She spent the rest of the day preparing, both physically and mentally. She pressed her dress uniform until every crease was perfect, polished her shoes to a mirror shine, and ensured every medal and ribbon was precisely placed. If she was going to step into the unknown, she'd do it looking like the soldier she'd always been. As afternoon gave way to evening, Sarah found herself standing at her hotel window, watching the city lights come alive. Somewhere out there, in buildings whose purposes were hidden from public view, decisions were being made that shaped the world. Tonight, she might become one of the decision makers. Her phone rang. "Marcus." "Major, I don't know what you're involved in, but be careful," he said without preamble. "I just got word that your access credentials have been flagged for some kind of update. High-level stuff. The kind that usually means someone's either getting court-martialed or promoted to the stratosphere." "I appreciate the concern, Marcus," Sarah said carefully. "I'm just meeting with General Williams about some career planning." "Right." Marcus's tone made it clear he didn't buy it for a second. "Well, whatever you're really doing, watch your six. I've got a bad feeling about this weekend." After ending the call, Sarah performed a security sweep of her room, an old habit from deployment. She found nothing, but the exercise helped calm her nerves. At 2200 hours, she began the drive to Arlington. The cemetery at night was a different world from its daytime serenity. Shadows pooled between the endless rows of white headstones, and the only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the whisper of wind through trees. Sarah approached the service gate on Eisenhower Drive, her heartbeat steady despite the circumstances. A security guard emerged from the gatehouse, not the elderly retiree she'd expected, but a young man with the bearing of special forces. He examined her ID with equipment far more sophisticated than standard cemetery security would require. "Security code?" he asked quietly. "Echo 779. He nodded and handed her a small device. "GPS tracker. Follow the blue line. Deviate from the path, and this meeting never happened. You were never here. Understood?" "Understood." The gate opened silently, and Sarah drove into the cemetery, following the blue line on the GPS device. It led her deep into Section 60. Past graves she recognized, soldiers she'd known, commanded, lost. The weight of their sacrifice pressed against her chest as she parked in a small clearing. 5 black SUVs were already there, their engines off but still radiating heat. Sarah checked her watch. 2,257 hours. She was precisely on time. As she exited her vehicle, figures emerged from the shadows, men and women in dress uniforms from every branch of service, their faces obscured by the darkness. Major Chen. A familiar voice made her turn. General Patricia Williams approached, but she wasn't alone. Beside her walked a man Sarah recognized from newspaper photos but had never met, Admiral Jonathan Reeves, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "Admiral," Sarah said, snapping to attention. "At ease, Major," Reeves said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of command. "In about 10 minutes, rank as you understand it will become complicated. Walk with us." They moved deeper into the cemetery, their footsteps silent on the grass. Other figures flanked them. Sarah counted at least 12, all moving with the coordinated precision of a protection detail. They stopped at a section where the headstones were older, the names weathered by decades of exposure. In the center of a circle of graves stood a small marble structure that Sarah had never noticed before, a mausoleum that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, its entrance dark and uninviting. "The tomb of the unknown commanders," Patricia explained quietly. "Built in 1962, during the height of the Cold War. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's where we've been meeting for 60 years. Admiral Reeves stepped forward, pressing his hand against a seemingly blank section of marble. A soft blue light scanned his palm, and the entrance slid open with barely a whisper, revealing stairs descending into darkness. "After you, Major," Reeves said. Sarah took a breath and stepped into the unknown. The stairs led down farther than she'd expected, at least 3 stories underground. Emergency lighting cast everything in a pale blue glow. The walls changed from marble to reinforced concrete, then to something that looked like it could withstand a direct nuclear strike. Whatever this place was, it had been built to last. They emerged into a circular chamber that took Sarah's breath away. The room was massive, its domed ceiling decorated with a map of the world in lights, tiny LEDs marking what she assumed were strategic locations. Around the perimeter stood 12 chairs, each marked with a different symbol she didn't recognize. At the center was a raised platform with a single chair, almost throne-like in its design. But it was the people already assembled that made Sarah's pulse quicken. She recognized some from photographs: the director of the CIA, the Secretary of Defense, generals and admirals, whose names were whispered in military circles like legends. Others wore no uniforms, but their bearing suggested power of a different kind: economic, technological, diplomatic. "Welcome, Major Chen, to the Shadow Council," Admiral Reeves announced, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Please, stand in the center." Sarah moved to the indicated spot, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes upon her. The assembled group formed a circle around her, their faces now illuminated by the soft lighting of the chamber. She noticed that Patricia had taken one of the 12 chairs, her expression unreadable. "Do you know why you're here?" This question came from a woman Sarah didn't recognize, elderly but with eyes sharp as a raptor's. "I've been told it's related to Project Prometheus," Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady. "Beyond that, I'm operating on faith in General Williams." "Faith?" the woman mused. "An interesting choice of words. Tell me, Major, what do you have faith in?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I have faith that the work we do matters, that every life saved, every conflict prevented, adds up to something greater. I have faith that there's always a solution, even when doctrine says otherwise. And when doctrine itself is the problem," this from the CIA director, "when the very structures designed to protect our nation become obstacles to that protection, then we adapt," Sarah said firmly. "Or we create new structures." A murmur ran through the assembled group. Admiral Reeves raised a hand for silence. "Major Chen, what you're about to learn is known to fewer than 100 people in the entire world. The Shadow Council was formed in 1962 in response to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Our founders recognized that the traditional military and intelligence structures, while necessary, were insufficient for the complexities of modern warfare." He paused, letting the weight of history settle. "We are not a rogue organization. We operate with the full knowledge and consent of select individuals within the government. But we operate outside the traditional chains of command, free from the bureaucracy and politics that hamstring conventional operations." The elderly woman spoke again. "We are the scalpel where others are the hammer. We prevent wars rather than fight them. We eliminate threats before they materialize. We save lives by making the hard choices others cannot or will not make." "And you want me to join you?" Sarah asked. "No," Patricia said, standing from her chair. "We want you to lead us." The chamber fell silent. Sarah felt the world tilt slightly. as if reality had shifted beneath her feet. "I don't understand," she managed. Admiral Reeves stepped forward. "For 60 years, the Shadow Council has operated under a collective leadership model. It served us well during the Cold War, but the world has changed. We need unified command, someone who can make split-second decisions with global implications, someone who understands both the military and humanitarian aspects of modern conflict." "Your record speaks for itself," the CIA director added. "Atlanta, you chose lives over protocol and succeeded. Afghanistan, you built alliances with local leaders everyone else had written off. Sudan, you prevented a genocide with nothing but a battalion and sheer audacity. You see solutions where others see impossibilities. But more than that," Patricia interjected, "you have something rare in our world. Moral clarity without moral rigidity. You understand that sometimes the rules must be broken to serve a greater good, but you never lose sight of what that greater good is." Sarah's mind raced. This position, Supreme General, it's not recognized by any official military structure. "Correct," Reeves confirmed. "Officially, you would retire from active duty, citing personal reasons. You'd receive a modest pension and disappear from public view. Unofficially, you would command resources that dwarf anything available to conventional forces. Black budgets, special operations teams, intelligence assets, diplomatic channels, all would be at your disposal. The 12 chairs you see represent the different aspects of national power," the elderly woman explained. "Military, intelligence, economic, technological, diplomatic, and others. Each member commands their sphere, but all answer to the Supreme General. It's a position that has remained vacant since our founding, waiting for the right person." "Why now?" Sarah asked. "Why fill it now?" The assembled group exchanged glances. It was the Secretary of Defense who answered. "Because the threats we face are evolving faster than our traditional structures can adapt. Cyber warfare, economic manipulation, biological threats, climate conflicts, these require integrated responses that our siloed agencies can't provide. We need someone who can see the whole board, not just individual pieces." "And if I refuse, then you return to Fort Bragg tomorrow," Patricia said simply. "You continue your career, probably retire as a lieutenant colonel if you're lucky. You'll have served honorably, but you'll always wonder what might have been, and we'll continue searching for someone else, though I doubt we'll find anyone with your unique combination of skills and integrity." Sarah looked around the chamber, at the faces of some of the most powerful people in America. They were offering her everything she'd ever wanted, the ability to make a real difference, unencumbered by bureaucracy and politics. But the price was everything she'd built, every connection to her normal life. "I need to know more about oversight," she said. "Power without accountability is dangerous, no matter how noble the intentions." Admiral Reeves smiled, the first genuine emotion she'd seen from him. "An excellent question, and exactly why you're the right person for this position. The Council operates under strict protocols. Every major action requires a majority vote from the 12 chairs. The Supreme General can act unilaterally only in cases of imminent threat, and even then, must justify those actions to the Council within 48 hours. Additionally," the elderly woman added, "we submit to review by a classified congressional subcommittee every 2 years. We're not above the law. Major, we simply operate in the spaces between laws, where traditional governance cannot reach." "I'd need to see the operational history," Sarah said. "Success, failures, everything. I won't lead blindly." "Of course," Reeves agreed. "Should you accept, you'll have full access to our archives. 60 years of operations, all documented. You'll find we've prevented 13 potential nuclear exchanges, stopped 47 genocides before they began, and saved approximately 2.3 million lives through preventive action. You'll also find our failures," Patricia added quietly. "Operations that went wrong, intelligence that proved false, lives lost despite our best efforts. We're not infallible, Sarah, but we're necessary." The chamber fell silent again. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat, steady and strong. Everything in her training said this was too good to be true, that shadow organizations were the stuff of conspiracy theories and Hollywood movies. But the evidence of her eyes, the caliber of people in this room, the sophisticated nature of this facility, it was all very real. "The ceremony," she said. "What does it entail?" "Should you accept, you'll take an oath," Reeves explained. "Not to any nation or constitution, but to humanity itself.